Welcome to the AC 24/7 Top Story Countdown. We'll guide you through the biggest news of the day. Our focus, advocating our rights, advocating health, and advocating Earth. Here's our pick for number 4.
For the millions of Americans affected by Alzheimer's, the road to battling the disease has been bumpy, but an experimental medication is offering new hope.
It's not a cure. It is not going to be a miracle drug. It is a great first step.
Participants in a large clinical trial received the medicine donanemab by infusion once a month. The drug maker says it slowed declines in patients' ability to think clearly and perform daily tasks by more than a third. The drug works by removing plaque buildups in the brain known as amyloid that are a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease.
They only work at the very early stages of the disease. So if you have mild to moderate Alzheimer's dementia, it's too late.
That's why neurologist Douglas Shari with the Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center says we need to build upon this research, stressing that early detection is critical. This latest drug is among a new group showing promise. The FDA granted accelerated approval for another experimental Alzheimer's drug called lecanemab in January. Robert Egge with the Alzheimer's Association says access to these new and upcoming drugs needs to improve.
That's what's the priority right now, is to make sure that these important treatments are available. If a patient and their doctor decide it's right for them, they can be sure that Medicare will have them available.
The drug maker plans to file for FDA approval by the end of June.
TheAdvocateChannel.com looks at the world through the lens of equality and inclusion. Subscribe, like, and share now. AC 24/7's Top Story Countdown continues with our producer's pick for number 3.
The Federal Reserve's fight against inflation is not finished.
The strains that emerged in the banking sector in early March appear to be resulting in even tighter credit conditions for households and businesses.
The central bank voted unanimously to boost interest rates by 1/4 point on Wednesday. That brings the federal funds rate to 5.25%, a high not seen in over 15 years.
My colleagues and I understand the hardship that high inflation is causing, and we remain strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal.
Another financial matter still hovering over Washington, D.C., the debt ceiling crisis. According to the White House Council of Economic Advisors, the U.S. could lose more than 8 million jobs and cut the stock market in half if the country breaks its spending limit. President Joe Biden and most Democratic lawmakers want it raised without any spending cuts.
Our view about the path forward remains the same. Can't choose the Default on America Act, must avoid the horrors of default, pass a clean bipartisan bill to avert default.
But some Republicans say Biden needs to hammer out a deal with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
The Speaker of the House has been sitting at the grown-ups table for months, waiting for President Biden to act like a leader.
Like the Advocate Channel on Facebook for the best way to get updates on stories that advocate for equality, justice, our rights, and more. AC 24/7 continues with today's top 2 pick.
A potential clue of why Fox News fired Tucker Carlson, a startling racist text he sent to a Fox producer in the hours after rioters stormed the Capitol on January 6th. The text first reported by the New York Times and confirmed by CNN. The Times reports Carlson was discussing a video he'd watched weeks earlier of a street brawl in Washington when a group of Trump supporters, quote, surrounded an Antifa kid and started pounding the living S out of him. Quote, jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously. It's not how white men fight.
This rhetoric that is meant to dehumanize, to degrade, to make us less than is very summed up in that statement.
Carlson, in the text, said he was rooting for the mob to kill the man. Quote, I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. But then he texts that an alarm went off in his brain. Quote, I shouldn't gloat over his suffering. I should be bothered by it. I should remember that somewhere, somebody probably loves this kid and would be crushed if he was killed.
The point around him maybe catching himself in the middle of that text doesn't change anything because the racial dynamics are still very much there.
CNN has confirmed the Carlson text was part of the evidence in Dominion Voting Systems' lawsuit against Fox News, evidence that was redacted in court documents. The Times reports the text, quote, set off a panic at the highest levels of Fox. Was this why Fox fired him?
This was part of it. Look, a lot went into that firing. This was definitely a moment where the members of the Fox board and even some senior executives apparently start focusing on this at the 11th hour while they're in settlement talks.
A settlement for over $750 million. One media critic questions the authenticity of the so-called panic inside Fox over Carlson's text.
Presumably you've been watching Tucker Carlson, or at least have some awareness of Tucker Carlson's content, his programming, his broadcasting for all these years. Why now? You know, is it only because someone sued you?
Carlson has long drawn criticism for controversial views on race and immigration.
This policy is called the Great Replacement, the replacement of legacy Americans with more obedient people from faraway countries.
But a former Fox producer suing over a hostile work environment for women at Carlson's show is shocked that Fox would fire him.
I thought he was invincible. I thought his team was invincible, and they believed they were too, by the way that they behaved.
Follow the Advocate channel on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated on stories that matter every day. Here's our #1 story of the day. Take a look.
Last fall, Deborah and Lee Dorbert were excited to be giving their son Caden a sibling. But at an ultrasound when Deborah was 24 weeks pregnant, the doctors had terrible news.
The baby has no kidneys and you have little to no amniotic fluid.
The doctor said the baby was sure to be stillborn or die quickly after birth, and Deborah was at an increased risk of a potentially deadly pregnancy complication.
I broke down crying in the room.
It's a rare condition called Potter syndrome. In many states, doctors offer to terminate such doomed pregnancies, and that's what the Dorberts wanted to do. But their doctors said it wasn't possible because of a Florida law passed last year that bans nearly all abortions after 15 weeks. The law has an exception in cases of a fatal fetal abnormality that is incompatible with life outside the womb. Dr. Stephanie Ross, a high-risk pregnancy doctor in Florida, says she understands why Deborah's doctor wouldn't terminate the pregnancy.
The moment the law came out, I think everyone was scrambling to try to figure out what exactly was that language intended to convey.
Doctors found in violation of the law can face heavy fines and even prison terms. The Dorberts had two choices: leave Florida for a termination elsewhere or take the pregnancy to full term. Even though it's legal to leave Florida to get an abortion, the Dorberts said they were scared they'd get arrested. So Deborah stayed pregnant.
I continue to feel this baby move and knowing that I'm going to give birth and watch my child pass.
Her mental health suffered.
I really started having issues with depression and anxiety and just not wanting to get up out of bed.
As Caden grew more and more attached to his little sibling.
He continued to see my belly grow, and he continued to fill my belly to feel the baby moved, and he kept getting excited that he was going to have a sibling.
The baby, a boy they named Milo, was born in March, and as the doctors predicted, his life was short. As Deborah held Milo in her arms, he gasped for breath and died in about an hour and a half. Deborah doesn't want to get pregnant again.
I couldn't go through another trauma like this with pregnancy.
When told about the Dorberts' story, Florida Representative Jenna Persons-Malika, a sponsor of the Florida abortion law, sent CNN this statement: "We are providing mothers with the resources they need to raise healthy children, empowering doctors to help their patients make informed decisions, and shifting the conversation to valuing life." But Deborah says Florida law forever damaged her family because she spent 13 weeks carrying a baby who was sure to die.
Thanks for watching the Advocate Channel's top stories. We're on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Follow, like, and share, or check out advocatechannel.com for even more stories that advocate for you.